It's wonderful to welcome Darryl Buchanan and Kelly Borg today. Darryl and Kelly are Associate Chief Executives at the Association of Independent Schools, New South Wales. Darryl is responsible for ensuring the educational policy decisions and strategies are implemented effectively across the organisation. As part of his role, Darryl, also the RTO Manager for the AIS RTO, Darryl began his career in education as a PDHPE teacher and has held student wellbeing curriculum leadership roles in the Catholic and independent schools. He's a published author through his work in the AIS New South Wales. Darryl's presented with keynotes and facilitated workshops, consultancy across New South Wales, nationally and internationally. We're also joined by Kelly Borg, who is also the Associate Chief Executive at the AIS New South Wales. Kelly leads a team responsible for professional learning and service offering in curriculum K-12, including VET. Kelly has designed and led implementation of long-term embedded professional learning in New South Wales independent schools in various areas K-12, including science, technology, competency development and implementation of the Australian curriculum. Kelly has held various roles at the AIS New South Wales since 2012, allowing her to use her expertise in curriculum development, pedagogical approaches and leadership in schools across New South Wales and internationally to design learning experiences for teachers and leaders. Please welcome Darryl Buchanan and Kelly Borg.
Hello everyone, thanks so much for having us. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and all Aboriginal people present with us today. It's a pleasure to be here and thank you, Fred, for that introduction. Denise, it was a really good move taking those chocolates back away with you because I don't think that'd have lasted the session. But yes, I'm Darryl Buchanan. I'm from AIS New South Wales and I have particular responsibility for leadership and learning at AIS New South Wales. And today we're going to be looking at the pathway options as they play out in the independent sector in New South Wales. Kelly and I have seamlessly got this double act going today, as you can see. But one of the things that we're talking about is, in terms of the way we work, Kelly and I both have a strong focus on learning in the roles that we do. And we have the pleasure of working really, really closely today. And VET fits within that very, very clearly. And so that's why we have a joint presentation today. The focus for us today is very much on a student perspective. It's very easy when you're thinking about VET in a sort of administrator or a bureaucrat type role, it's very easy to get drawn towards policy decisions, policy frameworks, funding discussions, and those bigger issues which are very, very important. Reports that are being released, what their implications are for us. Those sorts of things really can take your focus. But for us today, we wanted to give very much a student perspective from the independent sector. So what you'll see throughout our presentation today will be a number of images of young people in the independent sector involved in their VET work and involved in broader work with what we call pathways and partnerships and connections with industry. And you'll also hear from some of those young people about their experiences in VET and the pathways work. And so, the first person that we would like you to hear from is a young person from St Philip's Christian College in Newcastle, a young man called Damon Harrington. And St Philip's is a school up in Newcastle. It's a part of a group of St Philip's schools in the Gosford and Newcastle area. They do a particularly strong job in their VET work and also in helping support students in being really well prepared for that transition to post-school career pathways. And Damon will tell us a little bit about his experience with VET at St Philip's.
Hello, my name is Damon Harrington and I am the college captain for 2022 here at the wonderful St Philip's Christian College in Newcastle. Last year, I completed my HSC for Vet Entertainment, which through the AIS provided me with a full Certificate 3 and Statement of Proficiency in Live Production and Services. I undertook the course as a single subject acceleration commencing in Year 10, and I was fortunate enough to have placed first in the state for the HSC last year. Entertainment was a subject I was interested and passionate about. When serving on production at church and school, I loved the live experiences I had and the people I was surrounded by. Choosing the entertainment course was the next step in expanding and refining the basic skills I had developed. The school-based traineeship pathway meant I would have considerably more opportunities to work on live productions, I'd gain further qualifications, and I'd be paid for working in an environment I loved. The best part about this entertainment journey has been working on the many large-scale and diverse events. The course provided the theory and in-class practicals to deepen my skills, while the SBAT provided real-life, in-the-workplace experience. I had priceless time working in professional venues with industry-leading equipment, receiving recognition for my skills, and being personally tutored by industry specialists. Confidence was a definite secret to success. It allowed me to take responsibility, lead others, maintain a high work standard, experiment when I was lost, adapt my skills through COVID, and ultimately allowed me to have immense learning experiences. When it came to the HSC exam, I trusted my teacher, Mr. Michael Cooper, completed every single practice paper and question I could get my hands on, and studied the syllabus over and over and over again, ensuring I was 110% confident on every single dot point. After school, I'm not sure where my career might take me. Short term, I might work in the entertainment industry abroad, travel or go on mission. Most importantly, I want to be surrounded by people and have the opportunity to satisfy my heart's greatest desire, to simply love the unique people God has and will place in my life.
It's hard to not feel a bit excited when you hear a student like Damon talk about VET. I've watched him now many times and I find myself smiling, particularly in the part where he says that I studied the syllabus over and over and over again, a dream come true for many teachers. The independent sector is incredibly diverse, maybe more diverse than is portrayed often in the media. We've got 504 schools and campuses across New South Wales, as well as some independent schools internationally. There are 221,000 students, and that's currently increasing at a rate of around 7,000 students per year. So we're talking about a fast-growing small sector. Schools in the independent sector cater for choice through religious affiliation or through their pedagogical approaches. And so while we do have many schools that are associated with religion, like the Catholic independent schools, the Christian schools, Anglican, Presbyterian schools, we also have a very fast-growing sector within the sector of Islamic schools, Jewish schools, Steiner schools, Montessori schools, and everything in between. One of my favourite schools to visit is a teeny tiny little school up on the north coast where they follow a Buddhist approach to education. There's around 23 students, and every time I visit them I'm warmly welcomed with a vegan diet. As many of you know, the current measure of socioeconomic status is the DMI, or direct measure of income. And it's generally considered that a measure of around 104 is the median. Around 66% of independent schools sit below the median. So we're talking about 70 of every 100 schools sitting below that kind of median measure of socioeconomic status. Around half of the schools in the independent sector are small, so they have fewer than 200 students. And many of these small schools are low-fee paying schools supporting families who don't have high incomes. The schools that you often read about in the newspaper or you might see in news articles represent approximately 10% of the sector. They seem to get more coverage attributed to them than the small schools do. One of the student perspectives that we'd like to share with you today is that of a student in one of the small schools in central western New South Wales. Orange Christian School is a school that's undertaken VET in recent years, and they have undertaken it in a way that's really appropriate for their regional setting. I'd like to introduce Elliot to you in a moment, and I'm just going to give an audio warning. You'll understand why when you see the video, but it's necessary to listen quite carefully to Elliot because there's a bit of background wind. Unlike our first student perspective, he didn't have an entire film crew to assist him with the recording of his video.
G'day, I'm Elliot. I'm from Central West New South Wales and undertook the VET Primary Industries course at school in 2020 and 2021. The course, especially the practical aspects, fostered my passion in agriculture and its roots in genetics. This interest, as well as the support of local producers, encouraged me to set up my own flock, Mizpah. It is a Poll Dorset stud primarily. However, I run both a stud and commercial flock to support one another. The Poll Dorset is a meat and wool sheep, often used over commercial use as a terminal sire. This project was crucial to my understanding of the importance of primary industries nationally, but also the importance of small farms locally. The course, with my studies, helped me practically as well. Fencing tips and problem-solving skills are a necessity to any farmer, and the course was really helpful in this area particularly. And I suppose having an enthusiastic teacher and peers motivated me to give my all in the course. Undertaking the course prior to my HSC years was and is extremely beneficial. Structuring and planning responses and understanding what the question is asking was a focus area for our class in relation to exams, and I'm already seeing the benefits after a term of Year 11. Also, I developed organisational skills, which I admit I'm still not great at. And best of all, I've completed a HSC subject before the stress of Year 11, which is awesome. As I've hinted at quite strongly, genetics in agriculture is my passion. It is my absolute dream to continue with my business and learn more of how genetics affect the sheep industry and seek to develop stock which meet an always changing market for consumers. Overall, I would highly recommend undertaking a VET course to anyone. Unlike other subjects, the content is more practical based, which I think suits heaps of students, and also goes into more depth than what I've seen in other subjects. I've undoubtedly learnt skills that will last a lifetime. Thank you.
I think two things that stand out from those two personal stories. I mentioned earlier about how there's a tendency for administration and bureaucratic people in bureaucratic roles to think very much about policy and concepts. And it's easy to think about the concepts of VET being a skills development, skills focus. We talk a lot about things like entrepreneurship. I think when we hear from people like Damon and Elliot, we actually see those things being lived out. It's not a concept for us to talk about in a theoretical sense. It's actually lived out. You know, Elliot there talking about it inspiring him to start his own flock, and that's where he sees going with that. That's entrepreneurship in a 15 or 16-year-old young man, and it's fabulous to see. Another part of it's beautiful that comes through, both of those independently recognise the value of their teacher and the connection to the teacher and the teacher's commitment to them. And again, you know, watching things on the news last night around industrial action with educators and the passion and the issues that are at play there, very, very quietly and very saliently, both of those young people recognise the value that teachers bring to their vet experience. So Kelly has talked a little bit about AIS broadly. In terms of vet, the way we structure it has been evolving. AIS has been involved in vet for well over 20 years as an RTO, and we still continue to be involved as an RTO. We work very heavily with schools, and in fact that's growing, and Kelly will talk you through some of the data around that in a little while. But we've expanded beyond that. So certainly there's the RTO focus that we support schools to deliver vet in their own schools, to their own students, by their own trained and qualified teachers. We support schools to enable their students to access vet delivered by external providers through the eVet program, where those schools can't deliver vet on site. The third area is where we've grown, and that's an area around broader than vet, pathways and partnerships. We've had a lot of demand from schools for actually K-12 focus on how they can implement experiences beyond the school walls and connect with business, industry, tertiary providers and other education providers, governments and other stakeholder groups to help their students and their teachers develop learning experiences that are, I suppose, real world, to coin an overused phrase. And so we do that in three ways. We've been working with schools in an ongoing way to help them develop their what they call their pathways and partnerships framework and a strategy, so that they can build it from the ground up and connect with partner organisations in a really strategic way and a way that is sustainable for the long term. We have worked with schools brokering relationships with particular organisations where there's a really good fit for what the school wants to achieve and what the other organisation wants to achieve. And so we've helped partner schools in projects with New South Wales Health, with Deloitte's, with Sydney Science Park, with Collins Aerospace and a number of others. And the third way we're working in that broader partnerships area is we've established 5 regional hubs around New South Wales, where we've managed to get independent schools in those regions working together and connecting with their local industry, business and other education providers, so that they can help develop those pathway opportunities for the students. And that's been a really successful thing. You know, independent schools are independent. AIS does not own or operate any of those schools. They're all independently owned and operated. And in some cases, they're actually competitors for students, for enrolments in that local area. But we've managed to get them to work together on this issue because they see it as so crucial. And you'll hear a little bit more about some of those.
So VET continues to grow in the independent sector year on year. We have 36 qualifications being delivered across 120 training sites. And we get a bit excited when we see this data because although we're the smallest sector, it's very encouraging to see vocational education and the number of schools in the RTO growing year on year. What we've seen in recent years is schools who have historically placed maybe greater value on a traditionally academic pathway, beginning to recognise the incredible potential and value associated with a vocational pathway and offering vocational pathways for their students. These include the largest and highest fee-paying schools in the sector, so we're really pleased to see that shift. Oops. Insofar as the number of students undertaking VET, we see that grow year on year on year. We don't have the confirmed numbers for this year yet, but we know that they will be in excess of last year's numbers. We've seen relatively stable numbers for our eVet students over the last 10 years. They remain relatively stable for the reason that eVet is very expensive for students in the independent sector to undertake and prohibitively so for many of them. We expect the numbers to be higher this year, but that number is yet to be confirmed. The number of SBATs, the number here speaks for itself. Before 2020, we always saw a number of students undertaking school-based apprenticeships and traineeships in our sector in the low 100s. But since 2020, we've seen the number significantly trend upwards, and we believe that that's associated with an increasing willingness and flexibility that schools are providing students who are wishing to undertake this pathway in terms of timetabling options and support significantly from their teachers and leaders. One of the schools in our sector that offers brilliant support for the SBAT students is Bishop Druitt College in the Coffs Clarence region, and Darryl spoke about the regional hubs that we've established, and BDC is central to the Coffs Clarence hub. The really influential factor in this case is a very, very, very enthusiastic principal who kind of works night and day to ensure that his school community is connected to the business, industry and tertiary community of the Coffs region. And the school leadership go out of their way to make sure that the pathway options for their young people are smooth, flexible and supported. We'd like to share with you the experience of Jenna and Jonah. We did not pair them together so that I would trip over their names, but because they're having a great experience as SBATs at BDC.
Yenige, Wariyarininda. Nayam Jenna. Hello, who are you? I am Jenna. I'm doing a Elsa Dixon school-based traineeship in nursing, which will give me my certificate 3. While still being in school, I'm getting the experience of not only getting to see what goes on throughout the hospital and through nursing pathways, but also getting a hands-on experience, interacting with patients and really getting a stronger engagement. Miss Gina Driscoll, she helped me get this opportunity and keeps me on board. The school makes sure that I'm keeping up with all my schoolwork that I miss on my day where I'm actually at the hospital.
The program that I'm using is a Elsa Dixon school-based traineeship program. It helps integrate Indigenous people into the healthcare industry, working alongside the physios, occupational therapists, dietetics and speech pathologists, while also getting a deeper understanding of how the industry and field works. What I'm aspiring to do once I finish school is either physiotherapy or occupational therapy. The BDC Career Pathway program has helped give me a head start in school in the career that I want to do. It's also helped with getting a hands-on experience.
I would say go for it. It is such an amazing opportunity and it really opens so many different pathways and gets you right on the fast track to getting where you want to go.
There's no doubt that vet is thriving, not just in our sector, but across the board. I was talking with Fred Osmond just before we set up to present, and Fred was talking about how really a day like today is a celebration of vet. It's a bringing together of people who all have a vested stake in vet, and it's about celebrating the successes and the achievements of them. And for us, it's really important to highlight the success of that from the students' experience. Again, before the presentation, I had the pleasure of speaking to Tanya and Danielle down there from My Gateway, and I went down to talk to them because my eldest son is in Year 12 this year. He's doing vet construction at school, and he's decided that he wants to seek an apprenticeship as an electrician, which is fantastic. He loves the hands-on work. He's been around building sites quite a bit over the last couple of years with some part-time work and some family construction going on. But being able to talk to Tanya and Danielle down there was really, really helpful for me as a parent, because while I can have my administrator's hat on thinking about vet, it really hits home when there's a personal dimension to it. You really feel the importance of it. And so for me, I'm feeling vet thriving both from a person who works in the area or has responsibilities in the area, as well as a parent. And I'm seeing the experience in my son, and I'm seeing it in these stories today. So we're really pleased to see that thriving. It doesn't come without challenges. And from an AIS perspective, there are probably two challenges facing up in our vet growth. The first one is funding. As Kelly showed, our RTO numbers, that is the number of schools who are members of our RTO and the number of students who are doing vet through those schools, has gone through a really significant growth. We've gone from 85 up to 120 in the last 6 or 7 years, which is big for us in terms of our responsibility, and that carries obviously a lot of human resource impact. So we've had to grow the number of people in our vet team. We've actually doubled it in the last couple of years, which is fantastic, but it's also very expensive. And in some ways, it's been a similar experience in the EVET area. Kelly showed the numbers were pretty stagnant for a number of years. There's a slight increase or an increase expected this year, but there's a significant cost for students in independent schools doing EVET that is passed on to the parents, and that has been a bit of a barrier for some students and some schools. And, you know, as the numbers increase and the costs increase, but the funding is remaining stable, we're trying to do more with less, in effect. And that's been a bit of a challenge for us to grapple with. Probably the second thing that's been a challenge for us has been the significant change in training packages and the flow-on effect of that. That's required a number of teachers to have training upgrades and retraining and so forth. And again, when you've got growing numbers of teachers, that means more teachers needing retraining and new teachers needing training. The costs associated with that are pretty significant. Probably the bit that's missed in that challenge is the impact on schools. The training quite rightly is very involved and very, very focused, and it's quite time consuming. It goes over a lengthy period of time. And so for schools to release teachers to be trained is quite an impost on schools, and that's been exacerbated in recent times because of COVID. And as you'd be well aware, if you're connected to the education sector, it's almost impossible to get a casual teacher anywhere these days. It's hard enough having all your staff present on site on any given day. So they're challenges that we're grappling with, but no doubt it's a positive story in terms of vet. Perhaps the one issue that AIS is finding is a diminishing issue. Historically, there's always been that sort of distinction between the academic pathway and the vet pathway, the university pathway versus the trade pathway, and a sort of hierarchy or a privilege given to the academic over the practical and the vet. We're actually finding that's almost a non-issue these days. We're seeing schools, parents and students very, very interested and willing to take on vet. As Kelly said, some of the biggest independent schools in New South Wales are embracing vet and offering substantial vet programs through our RTO. And so we're not detecting that kind of hierarchy any longer. And I think decisions like the NESA one, which I know has been spoken about this morning, to do away with Category A and Category B courses in calculating the ATAR, that is only going to further make that a non-issue, I believe. So I'd like to show you one more story now, or soon. This one was taken from our Pathways and Partnerships Forum last year, which was a gathering of schools, young people, teachers, people working in vet, business, industry, universities, TAFE, and so forth. And it was about helping people make connections who could add value to one another. And these two people were, one was in year 12 last year doing an SBAT, and the other one had graduated a year earlier and had a significant SBAT experience or vet experience. One of them, the boy is from Newington College, and the lady was from Glenean Steiner School. Two very different contexts and two very different stories, but really quite telling.
So I've always been more of a hands-on type of person rather than sitting at home at 10 p.m. writing an essay, which I probably should have done last night. So basically going into a school-based apprenticeship has allowed me to both balance my HSC, doing 10 units at school, but also starting my trade early so I can get into a more money-making sort of situation earlier outside of school. But with also completing my HSC, it also allows me the opportunity, if I wanted to go back and study at university to do a business degree or something like that, it provides me with the opportunity to do so.
Often away from the headlines, young people are driving positive change. They're benefiting from real experiences in real careers. I must say, a lot of this experience is coming through the work placement program. I love what I do, and I'm very grateful for my broad education at a New South Wales independent school, which included valued vet experience. My school, Glenean, focused on pathways linked to passions and motivations. One pathway wasn't portrayed as better or more valued than the next. I strongly believe that this is a message that should be sung across all schools.
That was a really big event we held with over 200 people down at Daltone House in Pyrmont. And as you see, we spared no expense. We even recruited Tom Hanks to be the facilitator of that first session. Sorry, you probably didn't notice, but the guy in the middle was a teacher at Newington who was the spitting image of Tom Hanks. The key messages I'd like to leave you with today. First of all, what's very, very clear to us in the sector is that students value VET, and I hope that's come through in the student presentations today. Secondly, the data is telling us, and so are the anecdotal stories we're hearing from schools. Schools really want meaningful connections with industry, with business, and with external stakeholders. They genuinely want them for the benefit of the students and the school, and they understand that there needs to be a reciprocal benefit to the external organisation. And it's our view that all stakeholders have a shared interest and they all benefit when VET is strong. And for us, we hope that we're doing our part in that, and we're very, very supportive of any of the mechanisms within the VET landscape being manipulated and triggered for the benefit of students.
We'd like to leave you with an image from Naruki Google School in Naruki Google Central School in Carryong. Naruki Google means standing strong in Darkinjung language, and it's registered as an independent special assistance school, providing support for students in need. It offers very flexible vocational pathways, so they have VET in automotive, construction, hospitality, agriculture and retail. And this school really represents many of the students across our sector who are looking for something different in their education. The student experiences we've seen today have been catering for flexibility. They've provided students with options and different pathways, and the status of VET, because of these different options that are being provided, continues to be raised year on year. And we know everybody in this room knows what good news that is for all of us. The student experience that we've seen in these 3 short videos today is just the tip of the iceberg, and we all recognise that they're kind of the next generation in the critical role that VET is playing in Australia's future growth, our economic prosperity, including our recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much for the support that you provide to students in whichever sector or part of education that you're in. We are very proud of the students in our sector and the way that VET goes from strength to strength in New South Wales. We really appreciate having had the opportunity to share the student experience today, so thank you, Fred, for the invitation, and thank you all for having us this morning.
Thank you, Kelly and Darryl. Really appreciate all the support that you've given the veteran schools, but most importantly, leading a wonderful AIS New South Wales. Just as a token of our appreciation, please accept these 2 gifts to take home with you, and to thank you once again to sharing your story and a celebration of what you do in the veteran school space. Thank you, Darryl and Kelly.